Okay folks, today we're going to go back, way back, to basically Luther Perkins 101. I'm going to try to talk less. So let me just do a quick overview. I'm going to tell you about his gear, I'm going to tell you what you need to know, and I'll show you the basic technique of how Luther played the beat. Guitars, first off, Luther played Fender guitars. This is a Fender Esquire, made in Mexico 2006. Luther's first guitar was an Esquire. Later on in the late 50s, he started playing a Jazzmaster and eventually a Jaguar before he came back to the Esquire. But Fender guitars, single coil pickups. Amplifiers, Luther almost exclusively, used Fender amplifiers. I know he started off on a Sears Silvertone amplifier, which was because the bassist Marshall Grant had bought that amplifier for a steel guitar that they had a player for. However, he left the group, and so Luther took over the use of that amp. He also purchased a Echosonic amplifier from a guy named Ray Butts in Memphis, I believe, and he used that. But other than that, he used all Fender gear. The strings, Luther mainly used flat wound strings. Now the difference between this and normal strings are round wound strings, which is what you'll normally get at your store or order from whatever. Normally the outside of them goes like this, the coating around them. It's bumpy, round. These ones, it's flat straight across, flat wound strings. It gives it almost a deader tone if you'll just listen. It's not bright. I also think Luther started using half wound strings, but I can't prove that. So, those are the guitars, that's the gear, those are the amps, etc. Alright, in order to play like this, Luther wasn't a very good guitar player in the beginning. He just knew a couple chords, and that's all you'll need to know. You'll just need to know a couple chords, such as let's say A, B7, C, D, E, maybe F, I suppose, and G. Just know the fingerings for those. Now the technique itself is simply this. Luther would play the bass line of whatever chord he was on and add an eighth note in between. So that eighth note would be the offbeat, so 1 and 2 and 3 and etc. So basically, if you had an E chord, now just go ahead and finger your E chord down there. What he would do is going to place his hand over this bridge plate so that it meets the strings. His first guitar had the volume pot wired open, so he did this in order to make it sound softer, so it wouldn't overpower Johnny Cash's singing. So what he would originally do, he'd just play the bass line, and then he would actually, the way I listen to it, it sounds like he's just strumming the chord in between. So, and then you change chords up to the next chord. So A, then he'd play B7. The main thing is for these that you have to learn how the bass lines go. So for an E, it's going to start on the E note, the open E string, and then onto the A string, which you have fretted on the second fret as a B. Just going to repeat that, along with the strumming in between. A chord is going to start on the A string, then go down to the open E string. So like this. A B, being a whole step up from an A, is going to follow the same string pattern, except this time it's going to be fretted on the second fret of the A string, so that's a B, and then you're going to play the F sharp on the E string, which is on the second fret. So you'll have to switch your hand around like this in order to play that B7. You can see my middle finger moving there. Okay, that's the main way that I've seen him play it. Also, people will say, like, I know Bob Wooten for sure plays it like this. Instead of strumming the chord, he'll just normally hit the next string up from the bass line. So an A, he's going to hit the D string, and for a B, he's going to hit the D string, and for an E, he's going to hit the D string. Because you're just going to take whatever bass line you're playing and move the string up. For example, on a D chord, to mix it up a little bit, you're going to play the D and the A string for the bass line. Sorry, there we go. And now you're going to throw in that eighth on the G string, which is fretted on the second fret. You getting it? I hope so. It's not very complicated, but it seemed hard at first, but once you get it, you can go with it. Let's see. Let's continue. Another thing it would sound like Luther did would he'd add in a 16th note. It would sound like this, like you can hear it on live at Folsom Prison, or even on some of the videos of Johnny Cash in the mid-60s. Like I know Big River, he does this. You see that? All that is just the bass line. Instead of going, you're gonna swing a note in there, like, I'm sorry. You hear that? That's basically it. That's the technique, guys. There's not much more to it. Luther did that on basically every song, I mean, that I can think of. Even if there were some songs that he didn't do it all the time, he'd throw it in there. Guys, that's the basis of the Johnny Cash sound. Alright, I hope you learned something from this video. Leave a comment, send me a message or anything if you have a question, I'll be glad to help out. Thank you.